Imagine you're walking alone, not in broad daylight, but at the moment when the last light is disappearing beyond the horizon. About 100,000 years ago, no cities, no roads, no lights, no fences, and, most importantly, there is nowhere that can truly be called safe. You're less than a kilometer from your group's shelter, an insignificant distance in the modern world. But darkness is falling fast. You quicken your pace. In your hand is a spear. Its tip is made of stone. It makes you feel safer, but only slightly. Then, you hear something behind you. The snap of a branch. You stop. Everything goes silent. You look toward the bushes. Nothing. You keep walking. 10 seconds later, another sound. This time, closer. You stop. The sound stops too. And at that moment, you realize the most terrifying thing of all. Whatever is out there isn't accidentally moving in the same direction as you. It's following you. You don't know what it is. A hyena, a leopard, a lion, or a predator that modern humans would never have to face outside a museum. You tighten your grip on the spear. But there's a problem. Your vision in the darkness isn't good. The predator's hearing may be better. Its sense of smell may be better. It may see you before you see it. And if it decides to attack, everything could be over in seconds. Today, we often imagine our ancestors as hunters. People carrying spears, standing around a mammoth, chasing herds across the grasslands. That's part of the story. But it hides a much older truth. For much of our evolutionary history, humans and human ancestors didn't just hunt animals. Animals hunted us too. And traces of that struggle remain, not only in archaeology, but perhaps inside your own brain. Why does a sound in the bushes at night immediately capture your attention? Why do we so easily see shapes resembling faces or eyes in the darkness? Why can children be afraid of something hiding under the bed, even though they've never actually seen a predator there? Current research indicates that the human threat detection system responds very quickly to certain danger signals. That doesn't mean every modern fear is simply a memory of predators. Human psychology is far more complicated than that. But for millions of years, the ability to detect something stalking through the bushes may have created a very simple difference. An individual who noticed danger early enough survived. An individual who noticed it too late might never return. So, which animal was once the most dangerous? Lions, hyenas, leopards, bears? Or is the real answer a creature most of us would never even think of? To find out, we have to stop looking at ancient humans as hunters standing at the top of the food chain and return to a time when our ancestors were still on someone else's menu. Before the spear came fear. Let's go farther back in time, far before cave paintings, before bone needles, before sophisticated spears, even before Homo sapiens. Picture a small hominin moving across the African landscape. It has 2 legs, flexible hands, a brain that is gradually becoming different. But none of those things make it invincible. All around it are carnivores built almost perfectly for one purpose: to kill. Canines that pierce flesh, jaws powerful enough to crush bone, claws that hold prey in place, muscles capable of explosive bursts of speed, a sense of smell that detects what you cannot smell, hearing that picks up what you cannot hear. A hominin has none of those weapons. If a big cat ambushes you from only a few meters away, there isn't much time to think. This is why some archaeological and paleontological evidence is particularly frightening. We find hominin bones, and sometimes on those bones are traces left by another creature. One famous example comes from Swartkrans in South Africa. Their researchers have studied hominin fossils discovered in the same context as many other animals. Some damage on those fossils has been compared with tooth marks made by carnivores. Archaeological and paleontological evidence suggests that at least some hominins at sites like these became victims of carnivore activity. That completely changes the way we imagine our ancestors. Think about the scene. One individual leaves the group, maybe to search for food, maybe to find water, maybe simply to cross a rocky area. They don't know that on a high ledge above, a large cat is watching. The cat doesn't roar. It doesn't immediately charge. It waits, because successful ambush predators don't announce that they're coming. That's exactly what makes them dangerous. And among ancient predators, there is one group that deserves particular attention: leopards and their relatives. Even today, leopards are extraordinarily adaptable predators. They can live in many different environments. They climb trees extremely well. They approach prey silently. And they can drag carcasses up into trees. But what makes them especially interesting to the story of human evolution is evidence suggesting that small hominins may once have fallen within the prey range of large cats. One of the most famous fossils is the skull of the Taung child. The Taung child was a young Australopithecus africanus who lived millions of years ago. For decades, scientists debated how this individual died. Then a particularly striking hypothesis emerged. Perhaps the killer of the Taung child wasn't a large cat. Perhaps it came from the sky. Researchers noticed that some damage around the eye sockets of the skull resembled marks observed in primates preyed upon by eagles. Scientists have proposed that a large bird of prey may have killed the Taung child. Think about that for a moment. A young hominin, perhaps near a tree, perhaps searching for food, perhaps never looking up. A shadow passes overhead. And before anyone else in the group can react, a predator from the sky dives down. If that interpretation is correct, it reveals something extremely important. Danger didn't come only from the bushes. It could come from the ground, from the trees, from the darkness, and even from the sky. Our ancestors once lived in a three-dimensional world of predators, and that may have placed enormous pressure on the way they lived. Being alone was dangerous. Failing to watch your surroundings was dangerous. Young children were especially vulnerable. Sleeping in the wrong place was dangerous. Going to get water was dangerous. Even bending down for too long while searching for food could prevent you from seeing what was approaching. And this leads to a fascinating possibility. Perhaps part of the power of group living didn't come only from hunting together, but from not being hunted together. 10 pairs of eyes can detect danger better than one. One person can bend down to search for food, while another watches the surroundings. A warning call can trigger a response from the entire group. Children can be kept in the center. Adults can stand around the outside. Here, cooperation doesn't merely help obtain calories. It becomes a predator detection system. But if that's true, another question appears. If our ancestors had learned to live in groups, to keep watch, to use stones, then why didn't predators simply stay away from them? Because over time, the balance of power began to change. Prey learned how to fight back. Stones became weapons. Sticks became spears. Fire became a boundary. And a group of hominins standing together no longer looked like an easy meal. But that transformation didn't happen overnight. For an extraordinarily long period of time, our ancestors existed in a strange gray zone. They could hunt, but they could also be hunted. They could kill an animal in the afternoon and then have to defend that exact same animal from hyenas after nightfall. And in that world, there was one predator that was particularly frightening. Not because it was always trying to hunt humans, but because it wanted something a hungry group of humans wanted too: meat. And when two predators want the same carcass, the confrontation can become even more dangerous than the original hunt. That's when we have to talk about hyenas. When hyenas weren't just predators, but human rivals, night falls. A group of humans sits around the carcass of an animal they have just hunted. The hunt took hours, maybe longer. One person is injured, the others are exhausted, but finally they have food, meat, fat, marrow, hide, sinew, enough energy to feed the entire group for days. Then, from beyond the circle of light, a sound breaks the silence. Not like the roar of a lion, not like the howl of a wolf. A short sound, dry, almost like laughter. One person looks up, then another sound comes from the opposite direction, then a third, and immediately the problem changes. Because whatever is out there may not be alone. They could be hyenas. Today, our image of hyenas is often distorted by popular culture. They're frequently portrayed as cowardly scavengers that simply wait for other animals to finish hunting before moving in to eat the leftovers. But reality is far more complicated. Some hyena species are extraordinarily effective hunters. Modern spotted hyenas can hunt a significant portion of their own food. They have endurance. They are highly social. They possess extremely powerful jaws. And they are particularly good at exploiting parts of animal carcasses that many other species cannot process. Bones. For prehistoric humans, this created a problem, because humans wanted those things too. We've already seen why bone marrow was so valuable. A large skeleton wasn't waste, it was a storehouse of energy. And if both hominins and hyenas wanted access to the same animal carcass, the two species didn't necessarily have to hunt each other to become rivals. Wanting the same food source was enough. At many Pleistocene sites, archaeologists have found evidence suggesting that hominins and carnivores used or accessed the same landscapes, caves, and animal carcasses. Sometimes bones bear cut marks associated with stone tools. Sometimes they bear tooth marks made by carnivores. And sometimes both appear within the same bone assemblage. But we have to be careful. A bone bearing both tooth marks and cut marks doesn't automatically prove that humans and hyenas stood face to face fighting over it. One species may have arrived first. The other may have arrived later. The interval between those two events could have been a few minutes, or much longer. Archaeological evidence suggests that hominins and carnivores often participated in a complex system of competition around animal carcasses and shelter spaces. And once you understand that, you can begin to imagine the pressure. You've just killed an animal, but killing it doesn't necessarily mean you'll get to eat it. The smell of blood spreads, the smell of organs, the smell of fat. Other carnivores may detect it. Now the clock starts ticking. You have to process the carcass, cut away the meat, take the valuable parts, carry them away, and do all of it before something stronger arrives. In a world like this, killing the prey is only the first half of the hunt. The second half is keeping it. And hyenas are particularly well suited to this game. A single hyena could already be a problem. Several appearing together is an entirely different challenge. Imagine standing beside the fire. You can hear them, but you can't see them clearly. A low shape moves along the edge of the light, then disappears. Another shape appears. They don't have to charge immediately. They can simply wait. You have to wait too. But you're tired. You need sleep. The fire needs fuel. The children need protection. And there are still hours of darkness left. This is what can make competition with carnivores particularly dangerous. It doesn't necessarily look like a battle. It can resemble a prolonged negotiation conducted through intimidation. Who moves closer? Who backs away? Who has more individuals? Is the fire still burning? Are there stones to throw? Are there spears? One wrong decision, and a dispute over food can turn into an attack. But humans weren't completely helpless either. Stones could be thrown, sticks could extend the distance between a predator's teeth and the human body. Spears made approaching more dangerous, and fire could completely transform the space. A fire creates light, heat, smoke, and more importantly, a zone that many animals may hesitate to enter. We shouldn't imagine fire as some kind of magical shield that made every predator flee. Animals can respond to fire in many different ways, but the ability to maintain fire certainly changed how hominins could use the night and organize space. A group of humans gathered around a fire is very different from a lone individual standing in darkness, and this leads to a profound change. Humans began creating artificial zones of safety. Not perfectly safe, but safer. A circle of light, a shelter, a group of individuals, weapons in their hands, lookouts. All of these combined to create something that an individual body could never provide: collective defense. And as defensive capabilities increased, the relationship between humans and carnivores began to change. We were no longer merely prey. We became competitors. But hyenas weren't the only predators that could appear beyond the firelight. There was another adversary, quieter, more often solitary, and dangerous precisely because you might not even know it was there. Till the distance between you had already become far too short. Why could a big cat be the perfect nightmare for a lone hominin? Let's return to the path from the opening. You're walking back toward shelter. The bushes ahead are silent. No hyena laughter. No roar. No sound of running feet. And that's exactly the problem. An ambush predator doesn't want you to know it exists. If you detect it from 100 meters away, it may already have failed. If you detect it from 10 meters away, everything is different. Big cats are predators built around surprise, low bodies, relatively silent movement, the ability to accelerate rapidly, claws, canine teeth, and the ability to end an attack before the prey has much time to react. For ancient hominins, this may have represented a very different kind of danger from hyenas. Hyenas could compete in groups. A large cat could disappear almost completely into the landscape. And we have reason to believe that the relationship between hominins and large cats is extremely ancient. Some hominin fossils in Africa have been studied for tooth marks and damage caused by carnivores. Findings at sites such as Swartkrans have contributed to the hypothesis that some hominins were preyed upon by large cats or dragged into places where those cats consumed their prey. Once again, not every damaged fossil tells us exactly what happened at the moment of death. A carnivore may have accessed a body after the individual had already died from another cause. Taphonomy, the study of what happens to organisms after death, makes interpretation complicated, but the overall evidence points to something difficult to deny. Hominins once existed within the food web of large carnivores, and leopards are particularly interesting because of their behavior today. Modern leopards can hunt a wide variety of prey. They can climb trees, they can live in many different environments, and they often rely on ambush for a hominin smaller than a modern human, especially a child. A predator like that could have been extremely dangerous. This raises an interesting psychological question. Why are humans so sensitive to eyes? Imagine a dark bush. You can't see the entire animal. Only two bright points. Immediately, your attention is drawn toward them. The human brain is extraordinarily sensitive to faces and gaze direction. This ability has many important social functions. But in the context of predation, rapidly detecting a pair of eyes or an animal-like shape in the landscape could also have survival value. Scientists have investigated human attentional biases toward threat-related signals such as snakes, spiders, or angry faces. But it would be far too simplistic to claim that every modern fear response is the direct legacy of one particular predator. Culture, personal experience, learning, development, all of these shape fear. However, from an evolutionary perspective, one very simple principle still makes sense. Detecting danger early is more advantageous than detecting it late. If you hear a sound in the bushes, there are two possibilities. One, it's only the wind. Two, it's a predator. If you overreact to the wind, you lose a few seconds. If you ignore a leopard, the cost could be far greater. This relates to an idea in the study of threat cognition. A danger detection system doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. It only needs to be sensitive enough to make mistakes in the less costly direction. Better to mistake a bush for an animal than to mistake an animal for a bush. And if that pressure persisted across many generations, it may have contributed to shaping how a species observes the world. But even a large cat has a limitation. It often depends on surprise. If it's detected early, if humans stand together, if spears point outward, if stones start flying, the attack becomes riskier. An injured predator may die because it can no longer hunt effectively. So humans didn't necessarily need to become stronger. We only needed to make attacking us too costly. And perhaps this was one of the most important turning points in the history of the relationship between humans and predators. From an animal worth hunting, humans gradually became an animal dangerous to hunt. But as Homo sapiens and other hominins moved into the colder regions of Eurasia, they encountered new predators, enormous creatures, some powerful enough to kill a human with a single attack. And one of them even used the same kind of shelter humans wanted to use: caves. The problem was, it might have been there first. When entering a shelter could mean entering a bear's territory, you see the cave entrance from a distance. The wind is getting stronger. It's cold. A storm may be approaching. To you, the cave looks like life. Stone blocks the wind. A ceiling keeps out the rain. There's no need to build an entire shelter from scratch. You move closer, but just before the entrance, you look down at the ground. There are footprints, very large ones. Then you see bones. A few of them lie deeper inside, and suddenly, the cave no longer looks like a shelter. It looks like a home that already has an owner. In Pleistocene, Eurasia, humans and bears used many cave environments. Cave bears in particular were enormous animals closely associated with the ecosystems of Pleistocene Europe. They shouldn't simply be imagined as monsters specialized in hunting humans. Cave bears had complex diets, and considerable evidence suggests that plants played a major role in what they ate. But an animal doesn't have to see you as food to kill you. It only has to see you as a threat, especially if you enter a space it is already using. Current research indicates that the relationship between hominins and cave bears may have included overlap in cave use. But determining whether the two used the same cave at the same time, alternated seasonally, or occupied it during different periods requires extremely careful analysis. Even so, the survival problem is clear. Caves are valuable resources, and valuable resources often create competition. A good cave could be used repeatedly, across many generations, by many species. For humans, it could be a place to escape the wind, make tools, eat, sleep, keep a fire burning. For bears, it could also be a shelter. And imagine the difference in strength. You have a spear, you have fire, you have other people beside you, but in front of you is an animal several times heavier than you, in a confined space, with very little room to run. A direct confrontation would be the last option any intelligent person would want. Perhaps this is another important lesson about survival. Surviving doesn't mean fighting everything. Sometimes the smartest victory is noticing the footprints before you enter the cave. Because our ancestors didn't become great survivors because they didn't know fear, they survived partly because they knew when to be afraid. But leopards, hyenas, and bears still haven't answered our original question. Which animal was truly the most dangerous to prehistoric humans? To answer that, we have to meet a predator almost perfectly designed to become the ultimate symbol of fear. A giant cat that shared the world with Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. A predator large enough to attack the same animals humans hunted. And when darkness fell across Pleistocene Eurasia, its roar may have carried farther than the light of any campfire. The cave lion. When humans and lions hunted the same land, imagine standing on a Pleistocene grassland. But this isn't Africa. Around you stretches the cold landscape of Eurasia. Short grass, strong winds. In the distance are herds of wild horses, reindeer, bison, large animals moving across a landscape that seems to have no end, and somewhere among them there is a predator, lower than your line of sight, moving almost without a sound. You may not see it, but if it rises into view, you immediately understand the problem. The cave lion. Panthera spelaea was one of the most prominent big cats of Pleistocene Eurasia. It lived across landscapes also used by Neanderthals and later Homo sapiens. The name cave lion can easily make us imagine prides of lions living deep inside caves like bears. But the name largely comes from the fact that their fossils have been found in caves. They were predators of the vast landscapes outside. And they were large. Studies of their skeletons indicate that cave lions were impressively sized big cats, with some individuals potentially much larger than modern lions. But size is only part of the problem. What makes the cave lion particularly remarkable is that humans knew these animals very well. We know this because Paleolithic people left images of them behind. In Chauvet Cave in France, paintings tens of thousands of years old depict lions with remarkable powers of observation. The head, the shoulders, the line of the back, the posture. Some appear in groups. The artists who created them weren't drawing an imaginary monster. They were depicting a creature with which humans actually shared the landscape. Think about that. To draw a lion accurately enough, someone had to know what it looked like. Perhaps they observed them from a distance, saw their tracks, saw the carcasses of their prey, heard their sounds. Perhaps they confronted them. Perhaps they ran from them. We cannot know the specific experience behind each painting, but it is clear that the cave lion existed within the cognitive world of those humans. It wasn't merely an animal. It was part of a dangerous landscape. And here, humans and lions shared a problem. They wanted the same thing. Herbivores, horses, bison, reindeer. The animals that provided humans with meat and energy were also potential prey for large cats. That made the relationship between the two sides more complicated than predator and prey. Sometimes it may have been competition. Humans could approach carcasses killed by carnivores. Carnivores could approach carcasses killed by humans. Both could use the same migration routes followed by herds, the same water sources, the same landscapes. And when two predators operate on the same territory, an encounter doesn't have to begin with the intention of hunting humans to become deadly. One side only has to be in the wrong place, at the wrong time, too close to food, too close to young, or too far from its own group. But there is an even more interesting detail. Humans didn't only fear cave lions. There is evidence suggesting that they sometimes hunted them. Some Paleolithic sites have provided evidence of humans processing the remains of large carnivores, and discoveries associated with cave lions have been interpreted in the context of hunting, skinning, or symbolic interaction. Archaeological evidence suggests that the relationship between humans and large cats was not simply one-directional. This is extremely important because by this point, a reversal had taken place. Hominins had once been prey for large cats, but now some human groups were capable of turning the big cats themselves into targets. Not because the human body had suddenly become stronger. Our teeth were still small. Our fingernails were still useless in a fight against a lion. Our muscles still couldn't compare. What changed was distance. A spear allows you to cause injury before the canine teeth touch your skin. Multiple spears allow an entire group to form a wall. A thrown stone turns the hand into a weapon that works at a distance. Fire changes behavior in the darkness. And coordination turns many physically weaker individuals into a powerful defensive system. Humans didn't need to become lions. We only needed to invent a way to make the lion's strength no longer determine the entire confrontation. But this leads to a question. If cave lions were so large, if leopards could ambush, if hyenas could compete in groups, if bears possessed terrifying strength, then which species actually killed the greatest number of our ancestors? And this is where the story becomes uncomfortable, because science cannot simply give us a ranking. The answer archaeology cannot give us. Imagine we could travel back 100,000 years. Every time a person was killed by an animal, we recorded it. Date, location, animal species, circumstances. After 1,000 years, we would have data. After 10,000 years, we could create statistics. Lions, how many leopards, how many hyenas, how many bears, how many crocodiles, how many snakes, how many, but no such data set exists. What we have are bones, and only a tiny fraction of all the people who ever lived became fossils. Of those, only some were preserved well enough. Of the skeletons that were preserved, only some have been discovered. And even when they are found, the cause of death isn't always clearly written on the bones. A person killed by a lion might bear tooth marks, but they might not. A carnivore might bite a body after that person had already died from another cause. A skeleton might be moved by water, crushed by rocks, gnawed by animals, decomposed, or disappear completely. This is the problem of taphonomy. The past doesn't leave us a complete record. It leaves us a record torn into pieces, and scientists have to try to reconstruct the story from the fragments that remain. So if someone claims this was definitely the animal that killed the most ancient humans, we should be cautious. Current evidence does not allow us to reliably calculate which carnivore caused the greatest number of deaths across the entire history of hominins. The question becomes even more complicated because ancient humans covers an enormous span of time. Australopithecus in Africa lived in a very different world from Homo sapiens in Ice Age Europe. Different predators, different environments, different technologies, different group sizes, different behaviors. A hominin living 3 million years ago may have been extremely vulnerable to a species that a later armed Homo sapiens could drive away. There is no single most dangerous predator for every period and every place. But we can ask a better question. Not which species killed the most humans, but what kind of predator placed the greatest pressure on the way our ancestors lived. And once we ask that question, the answer becomes far more interesting. Leopards and other ambush cats could make traveling alone dangerous. Competing carnivores could make defending animal carcasses necessary. Bears could turn cave use into a problem of timing and territory. Nocturnal predators could make darkness itself a dangerous space. Large birds of prey could pose a particular threat to smaller or younger hominins. Crocodiles could transform the water's edge into an ambush zone. And that brings us to a predator often forgotten when we imagine prehistoric life. It doesn't run across the grasslands. It doesn't roar in the night. It doesn't need to chase you. It simply lies there, almost motionless, waiting for you to do something every human being must do. Drink water. The most dangerous place may be the place you have no choice but to go. The sun is rising. You've been walking for hours. Your throat is dry. Then ahead of you, you see water, a river, or a small lake. In the modern world, that would feel like relief. In the prehistoric world, it could also be a trap. Because water has one characteristic that makes it the center of life. Everything needs it. Humans, herbivores, predators. And because of that, places with water are also dangerous places. Imagine kneeling down. Your posture changes, your head lowers, your field of vision narrows. Both hands may be occupied. Your attention is focused on drinking, just beneath the surface. Something may be waiting. Crocodiles are among the most ancient and effective groups of predators ever to share environments with our human ancestors. Their strategy is almost the complete opposite of persistence hunting. Humans can win through time. Crocodiles win through a single moment. Remain still. Hide most of the body beneath the water. Move closer, then explode into action. A successful attack can happen so quickly that the prey has almost no time to react. Fossil evidence indicates that hominins interacted with crocodilians and in some cases may have become their prey. Researchers have described tooth marks on certain ancient hominin fossils, although, as with all taphonomic evidence, determining the exact sequence of events must be done carefully. But we don't need a fossil from every attack to understand the ecological problem. Hominins had to drink water. Crocodilians lived in water. That meant our ancestors were forced to enter areas where an ambush predator held an almost perfect advantage. And unlike a lion on open grassland, a crocodile could be almost invisible. A log, 2 points above the surface, the slightest movement. And then there is no time left. This could make approaching water an activity that demanded constant vigilance. Observe before moving closer. Don't stand alone. Choose your position. Watch other animals. Watch the surface of the water. Behaviors like these may never fossilize, but they are exactly the kind of ecological knowledge that selection and learning could strongly favor. And that brings us to an important realization. The most dangerous predator doesn't necessarily have to be the strongest animal. It may simply be the animal that encounters you when you are most vulnerable, while drinking, while sleeping, while injured, while alone, when it's dark, while carrying food, while caring for children. Predation isn't just a story about teeth and claws. It's a story about timing. And our ancestors gradually learned how to control that timing. Travel in groups. Choose where to sleep. Maintain fire. Keep watch. Carry weapons. Read tracks. Read sounds. Know where not to go. Humans didn't eliminate danger. We built more and more layers between our bodies and danger. And across hundreds of thousands of years, that created a transformation that perhaps no predator could have seen coming. Leopards still had claws. Lions still had canine teeth. Hyenas still had powerful jaws. Crocodiles still had deadly ambush attacks. But the prey they once hunted was changing. Not in size, not by growing fangs, not by growing armor. It was changing through culture. And eventually, a creature that once had to stare into the darkness, searching for the eyes of its predator, began making those very eyes in the darkness stay away from the firelight. That was when prey began becoming the most dangerous thing on the landscape. The moment predators began to fear humans. Let's return to the darkness. A large cat stands just beyond the edge of the light. It sees the humans, but this time it doesn't charge. In front of it isn't a single isolated individual. There are 6 people. There is fire. There are stones. There are spears pointing outward. One person sees it. Then a second person. The entire group stands up. A shout cuts through the darkness. A stone flies. Then another. The predator has 2 choices: move forward or leave. And this is where the balance begins to shift. Not because humans are stronger than lions. If you put an unarmed Homo sapiens face to face with a large cat in a direct fight, the physical advantage still clearly belongs to the predator. What changed was that humans increasingly stopped fighting as isolated bodies. We fought as a system. One person detects danger. Another gives the warning. Another keeps the fire burning. Another holds a spear. Another protects the children. Each individual performs one task. And together, the group creates something no individual human body possesses: collective strength. Think back over the entire history we've just explored. A small hominin could once have been attacked from the sky, ambushed in the bushes, forced to compete over food, threatened at the water's edge, but gradually, a new layer of protection emerged. Not thicker skin, but shared awareness. If one person saw a predator, many people could know about it almost immediately. A warning call transformed individual information into collective information. Then came another layer: weapons, stones, sticks, spears, projectile weapons. Each step increased the distance between the vulnerable human body and the predator's teeth. That distance mattered enormously. A large cat is built to kill at close range. Teeth work only when the jaws can reach you. Claws matter only when the animal gets close enough. But a stone can cause injury from a distance. A spear extends your reach. A projectile weapon can make the danger begin before the predator touches anyone. And then there was fire. Not a perfect wall, not something that sends every animal into panic, but a tool that allowed humans to make the night a less disadvantageous environment. Light helped us see. Fire provided heat. Smoke changed the surrounding space. And, most importantly, humans could maintain it. Lightning creates fire, but lightning doesn't protect you every night. Humans learned to preserve fire, carry fire, feed it fuel, create it again. A natural phenomenon became part of culture. Then came another layer: shelter. Humans no longer had to sleep completely exposed in the landscape. Caves, overhangs, structures built from wood, hide, bone, each created another boundary between the body and the outside world. But the most important layer of protection may not have been any of those physical objects. It was memory. If one person was attacked near a water source, the others could remember. If a large cat regularly appeared in a particular valley, the group could avoid it. If fresh tracks appeared near camp, behavior could change. If children were at risk, adults could keep them closer. A failed attack didn't merely save one person. It could create information that saved many people in the future. This is precisely what made humans such unusual opponents. A lion might kill one person, but if others witnessed it, they learned. If they survived, they told others. And if they told others, people who had never encountered that lion could still change their behavior. The predator wasn't simply confronting the individual standing in front of it. It was confronting the collective memory of the entire group. And across generations, that memory could become strategy. Current research indicates that social learning, cooperation, and cumulative culture are central components of human adaptation. In the context of predation that has a profound consequence, a predator species may require many generations of evolution to change its body. Humans can change tactics in a single afternoon. An attack happens today. Tomorrow the group carries more spears. The day after that they change where they sleep. The following week they avoid a particular water source at a particular time. In the next generation, children may be taught that the area is dangerous before they have ever seen the predator themselves. That is an entirely different speed of adaptation, and perhaps this was when humans began escaping the traditional role of prey. Not in a single leap. There was no morning when every lion woke up and decided humans are too dangerous now. The transformation happened gradually. One failed attack, one injured predator, one group successfully defending itself, a better technology, a better shelter, a new strategy, until eventually an individual hominin was no longer something every carnivore could attack at low risk. Humans became prey that could fight back. And in predator ecology, that matters enormously. A predator doesn't need to fear in the same way humans think about fear. It only needs to learn that a particular type of target carries too high a cost. A minor injury to a wild predator can be catastrophic. If its leg is injured, it runs more slowly. If a tooth breaks, hunting becomes more difficult. If an eye is damaged, its chances of survival decline. So a potential meal is worthwhile only if the risk is acceptable. And a group of humans with spears, stones, fire, shouting, may simply be a meal that costs too much. But this is where the story takes an extraordinary turn. Humans didn't stop at making predators avoid us. Eventually, we began actively seeking them out. When a predator's fangs became something humans wore, a dead lion lies on the ground. Pause at that image. For millions of years before this, a scene like that may have meant something simple. The predator is dead. The danger is gone. But to Paleolithic humans, the body of a carnivore could carry additional meanings: hide, teeth, claws, bones, and perhaps symbols. At some archaeological sites, researchers have found evidence that humans processed the bodies of carnivores. Cut marks on bones may indicate skinning or meat removal in some cases. Carnivore teeth were sometimes used as ornaments. Claws or other body parts may also have carried meanings far beyond their value as food. And this is something worth thinking about. An animal that once terrified our ancestors could now become something worn on the human body. A tooth threaded onto a cord, a claw, a hide. We cannot know exactly what each object meant to the person who owned it. Perhaps status, identity, aesthetics, memory, symbolism, or several of these things at once. Archaeological evidence suggests that the relationship between Paleolithic humans and carnivores wasn't simply an ecological one. Some species clearly entered the symbolic world of humans, and perhaps nowhere is this clearer than in art. Return to Chauvet. On the cave walls, lions appear, bears appear, rhinoceroses, mammoths, powerful animals, dangerous animals. Some weren't even species humans regularly ate. Why draw them, we don't know for certain. This is where we need to resist the temptation to tell a story that is too neat. We cannot confidently say ancient humans painted lions because they worshipped them. Or they painted them because they wanted to control their fear, maybe. But the evidence doesn't allow us to know exactly what was going through the mind of an artist who lived tens of thousands of years ago. What we can say is these dangerous animals were important enough to appear in their visual world. Humans didn't merely run from predators. They observed them, remembered them, painted them, perhaps hunted them, perhaps used their bodies, and eventually turned them into meaning. This represents a profound shift in the relationship between humans and danger. An animal can kill you, but you can also turn its image into a story, turn its tooth into an ornament, turn its behavior into knowledge, turn an encounter into a lesson. In a sense, humans began doing with predators what we have done with almost every other part of nature. We brought them into culture, and when that happened, the predator no longer existed only out there. It existed in imagination, in stories, in symbols, in fear. Perhaps that's one reason animals that hunt humans still occupy such a special place in modern culture. Wolves in folktales, tigers in legends, lions in mythology, bears in the stories of northern lands, crocodiles beneath the water, the monster in the forest. We have transformed the world so dramatically that most modern humans will never be stalked by a large predator. But the story of being hunted is still remarkably easy to understand. Just turn off the lights, stand alone, hear a sound you can't explain, and immediately your brain begins generating possibilities. Is something out there? Can it see me? Is it getting closer? This isn't evidence that every fear of darkness comes directly from the Pleistocene. Human psychology isn't that simple, but those questions reflect a very ancient reality. For much of our evolutionary history, the darkness really did contain things that could kill us. And those who failed to pay attention may have had fewer opportunities to pass their genes and knowledge on to the next generation. But there is a paradox. As humans became increasingly successful at dealing with predators, another threat began to become more important. A creature that also lived in groups, also used tactics, also knew how to ambush, also knew how to use weapons, also capable of remembering its enemies. And, unlike a lion, it could understand your intentions. The most dangerous predator humans eventually faced may not have been an animal at all. It may have been another human being. When the threat began to wear a human face, imagine a group of people discovering footprints. But this time, they aren't lion tracks, not hyena tracks, not bear tracks. They're human footprints. And, strangely enough, that may be even more worrying. Because what a lion wants is relatively easy to understand. Food, territory, safety. Another human is more complicated. They may want your water source, food, tools, territory, mates, access to migration routes. Or they may simply be afraid of you before you've even had time to decide whether you're afraid of them. Evidence of interpersonal violence appears in the archaeological record, although its frequency, causes, and severity vary enormously across time and place. Some skeletons show injuries caused by sharp or blunt objects. Some sites show events that may have been associated with collective violence. But we have to avoid a familiar mistake. We can't look at a few violent sites and conclude that prehistoric life was an endless war. Just as we can't look at evidence of care for injured people and conclude that every ancient community was always peaceful. Humans are capable of both extraordinary cooperation and extraordinary violence. That's exactly what makes humans an entirely new kind of threat. Lions have teeth, humans have plans. Leopards ambush, humans can ambush too. Hyenas have groups, humans have alliances. A carnivore can learn that you're dangerous. A human can think about what you think about them. That's another level of cognition. I think that you think. I predict that you'll go toward the water. So, I get there first. When social intelligence is applied to conflict, it can become a weapon. But that same ability can also create peace, exchange, alliances, marriage between groups, resource sharing, negotiation. Because humans can do something lions and hyenas cannot do with us in the same way. Turn a stranger into an ally. And perhaps this is the final thing we need to understand about the question, what was the most dangerous predator of ancient humans? There may be no single answer. In one place, it may have been leopards. Somewhere else, crocodiles. In another period, lions. Bears could be dangerous during an encounter. Hyenas could be rivals around food resources. And other humans could become threats in an entirely different way. But if we focus only on finding a single name, we miss the most interesting part. Because the real story isn't about which animal killed the most humans. It's about how living among predators helped shape humans into the species we became. We learned to look, listen, warn, cooperate, remember, teach, carry weapons, control fire, build shelters, read tracks, and turn danger into information. We may not have become humans simply because we had to confront predators. Human evolution is far more complex than any single explanation. But pressure from creatures capable of killing us was certainly part of the world our ancestors had to adapt to. And, eventually, one of the vulnerable prey species of the African landscape did something unprecedented. It didn't grow more claws, it didn't develop stronger jaws, it didn't become the fastest creature. It built a world in which claws, fangs, and speed increasingly mattered less in determining who survived. And that's how prey became the predator that nearly the entire planet had to learn to live with. Let's return to the night where our story began. You're walking alone. The last light has disappeared. Behind you, a branch snaps. You stop. Whatever is out there stops too. But this time you know what you might be hearing. Maybe it's a leopard. Maybe a hyena. Maybe a large lion is moving somewhere beyond your sight. Or maybe there's nothing there at all. Just the wind. But you still walk faster. To survive in the world of our ancestors, you didn't need to know with 100% certainty that danger was there. You only needed to recognize danger early enough. You look ahead. Finally, a light appears. Very small. Orange. A fire. Then you see human silhouettes. Your group. One person sees you and stands. Another adds wood to the fire. You step into the circle of light, and immediately the world changes. Out there, you were a single body. Here, you're part of a group. Many pairs of eyes. Many pairs of ears. Many spears. Many people who can stay awake while others sleep. The predator outside in the darkness is still stronger than any one of you. But it doesn't have to confront one person. It has to confront everyone. Perhaps this was one of the most important changes in the human journey. We didn't defeat predators by becoming stronger predators. We changed the rules of the game. A leopard can ambush an individual. Ambushing an alert group is harder. A lion may have fangs, but those fangs have to get close. A spear doesn't. Darkness can hide a predator, but fire pushes the darkness back. One person may forget where danger lies, but a community can tell the story again. One generation may die, but knowledge continues. And perhaps this is the most remarkable thing of all. The predators that once lived alongside our ancestors didn't only leave tooth marks on bones. They may also have left traces in the way humans organize the world. We seek safety in groups. We pay attention to unusual movement. We feel different when walking alone in the darkness. We build walls, lock doors, light our streets, keep children close when we sense danger. Technology has changed, But the question underneath it all remains ancient. What's out there, and can it reach us? Today, most of us will never have to sit beside a fire while lions move through the darkness beyond it. We have transformed our environment so dramatically that one of the fears that was once part of everyday life has become a rare experience. But to get here, countless generations had to learn a very simple lesson. Don't just be strong, pay attention. Don't just run, know when to run. Don't just fight, know when to avoid a fight. And above all, don't face the darkness alone. Because in the end, we cannot say with certainty which animal killed the greatest number of ancient humans. The fossil record is too incomplete. The time span is too vast. The environments are too different. An Australopithecus living millions of years ago didn't face the same dangers as a Homo sapiens in Ice Age Europe. So perhaps the most interesting question was never which animal killed the greatest number of our ancestors, but rather, why did almost all of them eventually stop seeing humans as easy prey? The answer lies in the firelight in front of you. Not one thing, but everything working together: fire, weapons, language, memory, cooperation, culture. A human alone is still fragile, but dozens of humans can coordinate, hundreds can share knowledge, thousands of generations can accumulate what previous generations learned. And when that happens, a creature that once stared into the darkness in fear of being hunted gradually becomes the creature the rest of the world has to learn to avoid. However, there is a paradox. Even after humans had fire, spears, shelter, and an entire group protecting them, there was still one moment every day when all those advantages became weaker. When you lie down, close your eyes, stop watching, and lose the ability to know exactly what's happening around you. Sleep. Think about that in a world filled with lions, hyenas, leopards, snakes, and unfamiliar groups of humans. Why would our ancestors spend roughly 1/3 of their lives in an almost helpless state? Why didn't evolution eliminate such a dangerous behavior? And more importantly, how did prehistoric humans sleep without being killed by predators during the night? Was someone always awake and keeping watch? Did they sleep in caves, in trees, around fires, or did the very way humans slept in groups become one of the secrets that helped us survive? That's our next story. How did ancient humans sleep without being killed by predators? If you want to continue this journey, subscribe to History in Sticks so you don't miss the next video. And before you go, imagine having to sleep outdoors tonight. No tent, no door, no lights, just a fire and darkness all around you. Would you be able to sleep, or would you volunteer to stay awake and keep watch?